The judge had already announced the death sentence when the dog entered the courtroom with evidence that could change everything. But no one knew that yet. He knew only one thing. They didn't believe him. Not the prosecutor, not the jury, not even the cellmate with whom he had spent his last weeks. But despite everything, he continued to hope. For what? For justice? For a miracle? Number. He hoped for only one thing, that Rustam would understand everything. "Alex, stand up!" The courtroom froze. The hum of the air conditioners, the occasional cough of an elderly journalist, the rustle of the court secretary's pen, all of this sounded louder than the judge's voice. Alex rose slowly, as if he knew that he was being ordered to stand up for the last time, not to be taken away forever. "The court has found you guilty of the rape and murder of Sophia Rendell. The verdict is death." There was not a single cry or shout in the courtroom. Only someone clicked a pen. The decision was predictable. Alex did not flinch. His gaze slid across the room, then froze. Somewhere behind the wall, in the corridor, in a carrier sat Rustam, his old German shepherd. Faithful and calm, as if he understood everything at first sight. He loved Sophia. Perhaps she was the only woman next to whom he could be quiet, not angry. They met after he left the police, and in a few months she became a part of his life, as if she had always lived in it. And then, blood, death, accusations. Everything pointed to him. Fingerprints, traces, DNA. His words, "I was set up," no one wanted to hear. "Do you have a final word?" asked the judge. Alex was silent for a long time. Then he looked at the prosecutor, at the jury, at the empty seat where Sophia's mother used to sit. "Yes, when it's all over, let me see my dog." "Rustam," the judge frowned. "Is this your last wish?" "Yes." The wish was recorded in the protocol. Alex was taken out. He walked calmly, as he once did to interrogation, to special operations. Only now, without a holster, without a badge. Just a jumpsuit with a number and handcuffs. In the corridor behind the glass, he saw Sophia's mother. She was not looking at him, but at the sky. A tired look, without tears, only silence and hatred. In the solitary confinement cell, for the first time he lay down right on the concrete, not from pain, from emptiness. The doctor brought pills, the chaplain, words. Alex was silent. There was no one to talk to. On the fourth day, a guard came into the cell. "Your dog has arrived. You have 20 minutes." He got up and left. In the yard where they usually walk service dogs, Rustam was sitting by the net. He didn't move until Alex came closer. Then the dog stood up, came over, and, as if those 2 weeks hadn't happened, put his muzzle on his lap. Alex sat down next to him. He stroked his head, felt the familiar fur, the same one he stroked in the evenings in front of the TV. Back when he was still a man, when he had a future. "Sorry," he said quietly. He didn't protect her. He couldn't. Rustam barked quietly. It was the sound he usually made when he felt anxious. Alex understood. The dog knew and sensed something. "They were wrong, Rustam. I didn't kill her." The dog raised its head. Its ears stood up, its eyes strained. And a second later, Rustam jumped up, turned to the fence and froze. Something caught his attention behind the net. There, far away in the bushes, a person or an animal flashed. A shadow, Rustam growled. "Hey!" Alex shouted, but the guard was already walking toward him. "That's it. Time has come. Wait, that's it. Let's go." Rustam didn't move. He stood by the fence and looked toward the forest. Then he suddenly jumped up and disappeared into the shadows. He crawled under the net, as if he knew he had to go. The guard swore. Damn, he escaped. Alex smiled for the first time in weeks. Let him go. That same evening, a short story appeared on the news. Former Detective Alex, accused of murdering a girl, was sentenced to death. The trial was declared closed. The sentence would be carried out within a month. The TV was turned off. Alex was left in silence again. But somewhere there, beyond the walls in the deep forest, a dog ran, who Bella didn't care about the essence. Politics and headlines. He knew only one thing. His master was innocent, and he would prove it. The prison regime did not tolerate change. Each day was like the previous one, like 2 drops of muddy water. Only one thing stood out from this viscous routine. Rustam's disappearance. The guards, having laughed at the great escape, decided that the dog would either die in the forest or be shot by hunters. Alex did not try to convince them otherwise. He simply remained silent. Now he had something that couldn't be taken away, a feeling that somewhere out there, in freedom, some other game had begun for the sky. 3 days passed. On the 4th day, a man from the Internal Investigation Service, Lieutenant Colonel Green, knocked on the prison warden's office. He was the type who never shook hands so as not to leave traces, as they said in the department. "You have a strange episode here," he said. "Do you still have the surveillance footage? Where the dog leaves?" "Yes," the chief nodded. "The cameras in the backyard recorded everything. I need to see them." The chief shrugged, not objecting. Half an hour later, they were already sitting in a dark surveillance room in front of a monitor. Black and white footage. Alex sitting next to Rustam, stroking his head. A calm, almost peaceful scene. But suddenly, the dog suddenly gets up and disappears off screen. "Wait!" Green paused and rewound the footage. "Here, look!" There was a vague movement on the far edge of the screen. A shadow. A human figure. Blurred, but definitely someone was there. "Not one of ours?" The chief frowned. "Not a prisoner or a guard, judging by his clothes," Green replied, tapping his finger on the screen. "You see, if it's truly innocent, it will hit everyone. But the evidence was ironclad. It was, and now it's not." Meanwhile, far from the prison walls in the forest, Rustam walked, guided by something ancient and unmistakable. Instinct, smell, tracks, scraps of memory. He knew this forest. The 3 of them were here, Sophia, Alex, and him. A hot day, laughter, the smell of coffee from a thermos, and the shadows of deer among the trees. Now everything was different. Silence. Only the wind in the treetops and a trail. It led him to the old camp. Trampled grass, charred stones, scraps of a tent. The air was saturated with a familiar smell, hairy and blood. Rustam buried his nose in the ground, dug, growled, and then a click. Something hard under his paws, a piece of plastic, a small box. He grabbed it in his teeth and ran, not knowing where. Through the forest, through the swamp, feeling his way to the dirt road. The pickup stopped abruptly. Jack Pearson, the hunter, reacted instantly. The door, the shotgun, the tension. But the dog didn't attack. It just walked up to him and carefully placed the box at his feet. "Who are you, buddy?" Jack muttered, lowering the gun. On the plastic was the logo of the camera. Inside was a memory card. Jack put it in his pocket and sat the dog in the back. "Okay, buddy, let's see what you've got." Later in his kitchen, he inserted the card into his laptop. The folder was called Night 1208. The first file was a shaky, dark recording. Someone hadn't turned off the camera. Noise, footsteps, a voice. "Hurry up, you're an idiot. You left your gloves on. Run!" She's unconscious. The camera tilts. Silhouettes flicker. Men in leather vests. One has a tattoo, a skull with wings. Jack squinted. He knew this tattoo, and he knew who was behind it. It was not a coincidence. In the morning, he came to the station. "I need a detective, urgently." The police had the map. At the same time, in the prison cell, Alex became wary. The lock clicked, not on schedule. He was taken to the interrogation room. Lieutenant Colonel Green was sitting at the table with a laptop and a folder. "Alex, we have new material. Video." He turned on the recording. Alex silently looked at the screen, and his heart slowly began to believe in what he had long since abandoned. A chance. Alex froze as if struck by lightning. The face in the video was painfully familiar. The skull and wings tattoo, the heavy gaze, the demeanor. The name came to him effortlessly. Blake Harris. One of those he had once tried to put away. One of those who had threatened him in the face and hissed, "We'll meet again." He slowly looked up at Lieutenant Colonel Green. "Does this video give me a chance?" he asked almost in a whisper. Green nodded dryly and reservedly. "If the examination confirms the DNA and the court accepts the recording as evidence, you'll get out. But you know yourself, That's still a long way off. Alex inhaled, without joy, without relief. He simply stated that a new battle had begun, and now the stakes were even higher. Green looked at him with an expression that mixed fatigue, suspicion, and something like respect. It all seemed as if Alex was telling the truth, but that's not enough, he said finally. We checked the bikers. Their last registered address was an abandoned farm in the north of the county, but they left 2 weeks ago, disappeared. He trailed off mid-sentence. If it turns out that it's them on the video, he finally added, it'll be a big deal. Sophia was killed because of me, Alex said dully, looking into space. 6 years ago, I locked one of them up, his brother. Drugs, guns, he got 20. They didn't forgive him. Green just nodded. You had a motive. Now we have evidence, but not proof yet. Meanwhile, outside the city, in an ordinary shelter on the outskirts, Rustam was sitting in a cage. Simple checkered concrete, a bowl of water, a creaking door. Jack Pearson drove him there the next morning. He had done all he could, he thought. Sorry, friend, he said as he closed the gate behind him. This isn't my fight. The dog didn't whine. He just lay down on the floor, his muzzle on his paws. There was no fear in his eyes, only anticipation. But Rustam wasn't going to give in. He whined at night, growled during the day, and once almost broke down the metal door of his pen. The shelter staff joked, it's as if this dog knows that somewhere out there, his case is not finished. They didn't even realize how close they were to the truth. Meanwhile, a request was made to the forensic database, comparing the DNA from Sophia Rendell's clothes with the profiles of Blake Harris and Charlie Gruber. 2 days later, the answer came. A match, 99.8%. The samples were identified. Alex was excluded. A week later, under cover of night and accompanied by guards, Alex was riding in a black van. He was still listed as a prisoner, but nominally as a temporarily released under protection. In the prosecutor's office, he was again shown those same images: shadows, voices, laughter. Everything he had been holding in for so long burst out, not in tears, but in a cold, calm rage. Did you arrest them? He asked quietly. One, the prosecutor replied. Blake Harris was found on the state line. The other is on the run, but with DNA, we can get him even from underground. What about the verdict? The Supreme Court is reviewing the decision. You will return to custody for now, but in a different status. You will be officially acquitted. Alex nodded. I want Rustam back. Rustam sat by the window in the enclosure, looking at the road. When the doors of the shelter swung open and Alex entered the building, he did not whine or bark. He simply stood up, like a soldier who saw his commander. Alex approached and knelt down. The dog nudged his chest, and for the first time in a long time, Alex allowed himself to close his eyes. He felt nothing but the fur under his fingers and the warm breath of his friend. But justice is a slow thing, and mean. The bikers hired lawyers, claimed evidence was falsified, and accused the investigation of pressuring them. One of the jurors allegedly had a biased opinion. A scandal began. The media exploded. An acquitted killer, a dog found evidence, revenge, or a mistake. Alex's name was back on the front pages, not as the name of a killer, but as the name of a man whose life was almost destroyed. The final trial lasted 6 hours. The judge reread the materials. The prosecutor filed a petition to overturn the sentence. In the end, one phrase was heard. Alex is completely acquitted and released. He went outside. Rustam was standing at the steps of the building, without a leash, without a collar, just standing. They walked away in silence. Freedom is a strange thing. While you have it, you don't notice it. But when it's taken away, you learn to breathe differently. The next morning, Alex woke up in a cheap motel room, not from the clatter of keys, not from the shouts of guards, but from the soft hum of the air conditioner. He lay in the clothes he'd been given and listened to Rustam snoring next to him, curled up on the carpet. He had no friends left. His family was scattered across different states. Those who used to be there for him had turned away. The phone the police had given him vibrated. A text message from Green. Harris turned in the second one. Gruber's extradition is tomorrow. Do you want to be there? Alex didn't answer. He didn't want to participate. He wanted it all to finally end. And yet, the next day, he came to the courthouse. Not for justice, for silence. Just to watch. The van pulled up, and a man with dirty long hair and a rumpled jacket was taken out. Charlie Gruber, the same one who was laughing in the video, holding Sophia by the hair. Alex was standing around the corner. No one noticed him, except one. Charlie turned around. Their eyes met. And in those 2 seconds, Alex saw fear. Real. Without a mask. Without bravado. And that was enough. The very fear that is not shown in court. Alex knew the man who killed would now live the way he lived, with the feeling that every move could be the last. Every morning would begin with a knock on the door. And that was enough. 2 weeks later, the trial against Harrison Gruber began. The prosecutor called witnesses, DNA experts, video editing specialists. The defense tried to challenge the memory card, claiming that it could have been planted. They talked about violations, about possible manipulations. But everything collapsed with a single frame. On one of the films seized from Harris, investigators found a passage where he himself, laughing, said, "Yes, we just buried this garbage. Who will listen to him after this?" And another phrase uttered almost casually, like a toast at dinner. "And this woman is to blame herself." Who did she get involved with? That was enough. The court sentenced Blake Harris and Charlie Gruber to life in prison, without the right to review, without the right to parole. When the hearing was over, the prosecutor was gathering papers, putting documents in a leather folder, and suddenly looked at Alex. "Do you want to file a civil suit?" he asked. "Compensation, false accusations, years of life, reputation, it's millions." Alex shook his head. "No." "Why?" He looked down the hallway where Rustam lay on the floor, chewing on an old rubber ball he'd found at the shelter. "Because I don't need the money," Alex said quietly. "I need all of this to be behind me." Later, he was invited to talk shows, interviews for major TV channels. He refused. They wanted to see him at a conference on criminal justice reform. He refused. They offered to write a book. He refused. Alex simply bought an old car with the crumbs that were left, threw a bowl for Rustam, a blanket, a backpack into the trunk and said, "Let's go." The house he moved into was old, creaky, and smelled like all houses that have stood without people for a long time. Damp wood and something forgotten. But it was clean. The owner, a local carpenter, repaired the roof before leaving, left a supply of firewood, and, leaving, said, "The silence here is not just a background. The silence here is like a person. You will have to live with it." Alex only nodded. He knew what it was like to live with someone who does not speak. He bought a house with the compensation, which he eventually accepted. The money was transferred automatically, and he felt as if he had touched the money with dirty hands. But he chose the place right away. The outskirts of the state, forests, lakes, 40 minutes to the nearest town, 10 minutes on foot to the nearest neighbor. The perfect place to not hear other people's voices. At first, life seemed false. Every creak was a warning. Every glance in the supermarket was a sentence. Alex caught himself locking the doors during the day and checking the windows twice at night. Rustam, on the contrary, adapted quickly. It was as if he immediately understood. That's it. There is no more danger. Now, just live. The morning began the same way. First, silence. Then, Rustam's light steps on the wooden floor. Then, the slam of the door, the porch, cold air, steam over a cup of coffee. Rustam would lie down at his feet, his muzzle on his paws, and just wait. Sometimes Alex would go into the forest, not to hunt, not to have a goal, just to go. An axe over his shoulder, a thermos in his backpack. He would leave for the day. He would return in the evening with brushwood, mushrooms, sometimes fish. Working with his hands was the only thing that reminded him that he was still alive. The neighbors, if you could call them that, didn't pry into his soul. A local mechanic, Wald, once offered him a part-time job, sawing wood, repairing fences. Alex agreed. He wasn't looking for friends, but there were no enemies here either. "Where are you from?" Wald asked once. "From far away," Alex answered. That was enough. Once a month, he would go to town. He would buy food, fishing gear, books, sometimes old newspapers. He would leaf through them, as if he were looking for himself. But no one had written about him for a long time. The world had forgotten, and that was good. Rustam sat next to him in the car, looked out the window, snorted when they passed bikers. He still remembered the smell. Alex felt it, but now none of them were alarming. Those who were supposed to go to jail went to jail. The rest disappeared, as if they had never existed. One day Green came to visit him, without a uniform, without a car with special signals, in an old pickup. In his hands was a canvas bag. He came out, said hello, sat down on the porch, and silently opened a beer. "There you are," he said. "Where else would I be?" Alex answered. Green nodded. "Didn't get your license reinstated?" "I don't want to. I'm no longer in the system." "You were a good cop, after all. It doesn't matter anymore." They were silent for about 10 minutes. Then Green put the bag on the floor. "Here are the documents. If you ever want to be reinstated." He took a small medallion from his inside pocket. A service badge. 21st District, until the end. "It's unofficial, but you deserve it." Alex took the token, looked at it, squeezed it in his palm. "Thank you. I'll go. Good luck." They never saw each other again. The years went by. Rustam was getting older. His muzzle turned gray, his paws became slower. He still went for walks with Alex, but he no longer ran after birds. He often lay under a tree and simply watched his owner chop wood or fix the roof. He lived for 4 more years, and one day he simply did not wake up. Alex buried him near the house under a large oak tree. He put up a wooden cross. He didn't write anything. He just sat next to him and sat until sunset, watching the sun's rays pass through the leaves. He didn't cry. He didn't speak. He just quietly inhaled. "Thank you." Now he lived alone. Sometimes the neighbors' children would come to help with food or just stand silently on the threshold. He did not become the one who was feared, but also not the one to whom people ran for advice. He was simply a man who survived, who went through death, betrayal, prison, and survived. One evening, when he was reading an old book and drinking tea, a branch hit the window. The wind was getting stronger. Alex went out onto the porch, adjusted the shutter, breathed in the cold air, looked at the sky, and suddenly realized, now everything is in its place. He did not want to return to the past. He did not hold a grudge. He did not expect revenge. All this is gone. Only peace remains. And memory about her, about him, about the dog that once saved his life. He sat down on the steps of the porch, turned his face to the wind, and closed his eyes. Silence, the one the carpenter had spoken of, the one with whom it was now possible to live.